Blessings, good evening. Tonight we're live streaming from Odipala Monastery near Adelaide, South Australia. It's also the half moon Sila Day, Buddhist holy day. So just now we chanted the paritas, the verses of protection. Buddhists have been chanting or reciting these verses in different countries right through since the time of the Buddha. Some of the verses be more familiar with you than others. A verse in praise or recollection of the qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. That chant that we do beginning Iti Piso Bhagawa Arahang Sama. Very, very familiar in the Buddhist world. And the recitation of suttas, verses, teachings, gathas, what we call gathas, has played an important role in Buddhist practice for both Sangha and laity over the years. It's one way we preserve the teachings, by reciting them, memorizing them, even though in different monasteries and communities and different countries, the way people recite, the rhythm and the style may vary. The words and the meaning of the words pointing to the same things, going back right to the time of the Buddha. Many people find recitation and chanting a useful way to train their mind. Many people know how tricky and uncertain their mind is when they come to meditate. And we give teaching on how to meditate on the breath, or to develop the practice of vipassana meditation, developing the perception of the impermanence of phenomena, the unsatisfactory nature of phenomena, the not self nature or the lack of self in phenomena, and so on. But as you do that, many people find it tricky to keep in touch with their own mind. As soon as you close your eyes, people have trouble with sleepiness, endless thinking, worrying, planning, desiring and wanting. Some people are more visual, they have lots of visual images. Some people are more thinkers, they're constantly thinking, and so on. So many people find recitation of paritas, suttas, and other verses very helpful. And so over the centuries, this way of chanting with a rhythm so that you can chant together as a group has developed. And the idea, the Buddha didn't encourage it to be like a sing-song, although it may sometimes sound like that. It's more just to recite verses that both bring up faith and calm the mind and brighten the mind, but also have good meaning and bring you to recollect the Buddha, our teacher, the enlightened, fully awakened Buddha, the Dhamma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the awakened disciples of the Buddha. So as you chant or recite these verses, you tend to recollect the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha in one aspect or another, maybe one aspect of the Dhamma, one particular quality. It could be the quality of kindness or compassion or mindfulness or impermanence, or just the blessings of having been born and come in contact with the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha, and so on. There's so many different skillful ways of thinking that come up, stimulated by these chants and recitations. And also there's a very practical advantage, benefit from recitation, is that it's a fairly clear-cut meditation object. And you can see recitation and chanting as a form of meditation, training your mind. It may seem a bit remote for someone who's new to Buddhism, who's never learned these chants in Pali or English or their own language. They may seem a little distant, remote, but if you do familiarize yourself with the chants, and nowadays that's very easy, you can learn them, you can hear them online, read them, and so on. As you become more familiar with them, they're a very good meditation object for training your mind just to put attention on the word, the phrase, the sentence, the paragraph, and the whole chant. And the recommendation, the suggestion is to chant with mindfulness and full awareness, and not to get distracted, not to lose your mindfulness as you're chanting. So if you're chanting one of the paritas, one of the verses of protection, well, you chant from start to finish, and that's your aim, is to not give up halfway or lose your place or become distracted. Obviously not to sort of start talking or looking around or whatever, but to finish that chant from start to finish with mindfulness, complete it. And you'll see, as we chanted just now, that we did a whole number of different chants, which you can find in the chanting book. And if you chant a number of paritas, one after another, after another, after another, and you're aiming to be fully mindful doing that, what you find is it really does drive out all the distractions, the hindrances, the sleepiness, the worries, and so on very well. Because there's no room for your mind to start thinking about other stuff if you've got to complete a chant. And that's true whether you're just on your own. So chanting isn't something you only do in a group. It's also something you can use on your own as a way to develop mindfulness, pay attention, develop concentration and samadhi, to deal with hindrances, instability of mind brought up by worries and distraction, or to overcome sleepiness when we have some tiredness. And you can chant on your own or in a group, and it will help you to develop endurance and patience, because to start and finish a chant, you have to see it through. You probably notice when you meditate, it's so easy to say, well, I'm meditating on the breathing, and you sit down with your eyes closed, and what happens? You say to yourself, I'm meditating on the breath, and from time to time you may notice your breath, be aware of the feeling of the in-breath, the out-breath. There'll also be big gaps probably in your mindfulness where you're not very aware of the breath as a sensation, and your mind is caught into thinking or falling asleep. And you may not even realize, because the breath is a very subtle object, and you may convince yourself or tell yourself, oh, I'm with the breath, but your mind is really just thinking along many different lines of thought in a distracted way, or becoming dull or sleepy. And it may be quite a while, maybe many minutes before you realize. So it's quite possible you don't develop, at first at any rate, you don't develop strong concentration, states of calm. You may not even realize that you're particularly mindful of the breath, or not. You're just not aware. Your mind gets lost. But if you are chanting, you know whether you're mindful of your chant or not, because when you're chanting, there should be noise coming out of your mouth. There are words that you're saying. It doesn't matter so much how well you pronounce the words. If you're new, your pronunciation may not be so good. When I first began chanting as an anagarika, a trainee waiting to become a monk in Thailand, my pronunciation was awful. because I came from England and I hadn't been trained in Pali chanting. But I could understand how to use the chant as a way to train my mind, because whether your pronunciation is good or bad, you know whether you're with the chant, you're mindful of the chant, you're paying attention whether the sound is coming out of your mouth or not. And that's the important thing. It's a very obvious and clear meditation object that you can train yourself with. So on occasions like this, when you have a program with chanting, meditation, Dhamma teaching, and so on, the chanting can be a very good preparation for the breath meditation, or you can do it after your breath meditation to revive you if you're becoming tired, sleepy, distracted. And when you're chanting, you know what you're doing in that moment. Ideally, you know whether you're with the chant or not, whether you've got those words in mind or not. And anyone who's trying to commit a chant to memory, trying to memorize a parita or another verse, they'll know this phenomena where you're memorizing the chant and for a while you're mindful, and then you lose your mindfulness and your mind goes blank, or you forget, or there's no sound coming out of your mouth. And it makes it very clear to you that at that moment you're not particularly mindful. So as a basic practice of training the mind in mindfulness and memory, it's a very useful thing. And often Buddhists will memorize chants right through their life. Even at the later stages of your life, to memorize a new chant can be a very good way to train your brain, train your memory, stave off some of the effects of old age, perhaps. And it can be a very useful way to bridge between the normal state of mind. You're active in your day, going here, going there, doing different things. And then you want to have a period of meditation. So you come to sit down, and particularly sitting meditation when you're physically still, it can be quite challenging to turn straight to the breath, because the breath is such a subtle object. Or other reflections, meditations, say on the body, or cultivating the thought of loving kindness and so on. These can be quite challenging to turn to them straight away after being very active doing other things. So sometimes chanting is a good preparation for other forms of meditation. It's a bridge, a link between your normal state of mind and the meditative state of mind, where you're intensifying your efforts to bring up mindfulness, pay attention, keep your awareness in the present moment, be non-distracted, and so on. One of the other main benefits of chanting is it stimulates wisdom, reflection on the teachings, stimulates very skillful qualities of mind. So depending what you're chanting, it may stimulate reflection on goodwill, kindness, compassion, reflection on impermanence, remembering the qualities of the Buddha, and so on. So if you're chanting with mindfulness, making that effort over and over again for a period of time, it can really drive out hindrances, distractions, different emotional states, negative emotions that have been bothering you perhaps. It can drive them out. There's just no space in the mind for them while you're chanting. And you can completely forget moods that were bothering you previously before you were chanting. Anger, different kinds of sensual desire, worry and anxiety, fear, all these different emotional states just fade out because of the positive, wholesome effect of the chant. And you completely forget some bit of suffering you're experiencing. When we experience suffering, obviously some of our suffering is physical, to do with pain in the body and discomfort. But a lot of our suffering is also mental discomfort, mental pain based on unpleasant memories and thoughts and states of mind. And the chanting can help you to completely dispel that, push it away, or completely forget it. So as you begin chanting, you may be feeling tense or unhappy about something or other, or angry. But as you get into the chant, that anger is no longer being fed. You're not thinking about that issue, that problem that was bothering you. Now you're thinking about the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha or the quality of metta or the various blessings and things that these verses of protection are pointing to. And so the whole direction of your mind changes, brings up wholesome, skillful states of mind. Physically, you tend to calm down through the chanting. You can even do your own experiment, measure your pulse, your heart rate, your blood pressure before chanting, afterwards. You may find you calm down, helps you to relax, helps you to be more stable physically and mentally. And of course, if your mind becomes more stable, more skillful thoughts and qualities are arising, the mindfulness, the samadhi, the goodwill, and so on. If these are arising, they'll be accompanied by a feeling of well-being. Brings up faith, and faith is accompanied by feeling of well-being as well. So you notice that your whole physical and mental experience can change through chanting. Another part of it is like if you chant regularly, if you, like in a monastery, we chant morning chanting, evening chanting, we have blessings. We, as monks and monastics, we often are learning chants in our own time as a form of meditation and mental training again. If you chant regularly, again, it very quickly puts you in the right frame of mind to let go of negative states of suffering, stress, and bring up the wholesome, skillful qualities. And it's quick because you've done it before, it becomes like a good habit. So as you chant, you quickly forget, ignore, let go of negative states of mind, and you quickly calm down. So it's actually can be a fast track to samadhi, which tends to be what many meditators are looking for. They want a nice, peaceful state of mind where all their daily stress and worries and problems start to fade away. They experience the peaceful mind. Most people are looking for that, and chanting can bring you that, sometimes quite quickly. So we use it all the time, and you can use it too in your life, whether you're working or you're in a monastery or you're on a meditation retreat or you're just going about your life, but you incorporate chanting, recitation into part of your daily practice. You can use it, and you can use it at times when you're stressed and you don't know what to do, when you're panicking or confused or unhappy about something. It can help you to pay attention to what's going on. You recite, whether it's one simple word from a chant or a phrase, like iti piso bhagawa, or you have a whole chant that you keep reciting over and over again to hold your attention in a difficult situation. You can do that. And so many monastics and lay people have told me how they've used chanting in kind of unpredictable, unexpected situations. When you're in a difficult meeting with other people and you have to pay attention but keep your mind in the present moment, not say something that you might regret, or not run away from that meeting, or have some problem, you just quietly recite over and over again a particular chant in your mind to hold your attention. Or sometimes we even say the chant out loud, even in a challenging, stressful situation. So like for monastics, sometimes we meet animals very up close, large animals, like deer, or in Australia, deer or kangaroo or a snake. In the jungles of Asia, sometimes animals that potentially could hurt you, bears and tigers and elephants. And just a gentle recitation steadies your mind keeps your mind from falling into fear or panic. And that seems to resonate with the animal that you've encountered, helps them to calm down. Or, the fear of spirits and ghosts people have can help to hold your mind in the state of calm as you think you're encountering a ghost, whether you are or not, who knows? But, it keeps your mind calm in that situation when you may be fearful or panicking. Prior to surgery, medical tests, MRI scans, and so on, we can use chanting to keep the mind calm, to bring up the mindfulness when we're tempted to panic. In situations where somebody is being very argumentative with us or aggressive towards us, we can chant quietly in our mind or even verbally out loud to keep the mind calm in that difficult situation, and so on and on. There's so many applications for this. You might say chanting is a very traditional thing. Only people, monks in monasteries do, and it is nothing for me. It's not something I could do. You might think like that. But if you see it as a way of mental training, a way of developing mindfulness, and particularly in challenging situations, well, the applications are innumerable, many, and you should maybe try it. Of course, first of all, you have to learn a chant off by heart, memorize it. Because if you, in a difficult situation, you're facing a challenging situation, facing a barking dog or an argumentative colleague at work or an argument with your spouse or something, you won't have time to go and pick up your chanting book, perhaps, in the moment. But if you have committed a chant to memory, or even just a few words, then you can recite them at that moment to hold your attention, stay calm, help you deal with that situation better. Even if the other person has no knowledge of what you're doing, doesn't understand it, at least you understand what you're doing. It can help you. But not just in those challenging, difficult situations, but just as a general method for calming your mind, maybe in conjunction with breath meditation or vipassana meditation. You do chanting first to calm your mind, put it into a wholesome state, prepare you for developing more refined states of mindfulness and wisdom and investigation as well. And you can practice vipassana as you're chanting. It's not like it's something separate from the development of wisdom or insight meditation. If you're chanting, you can reflect on sound arising, passing away, hearing the sound of the chanting, your own verbal chanting, your own, the sound of your own chant, hearing the sound, the movement of your mouth, the sensations in your body as you're chanting, the words coming out, how you feel. You may begin your chanting feeling distracted, tired, stressed, whatever. As you keep chanting, then by observing with mindfulness, you notice how your body and mind change during the period of chanting. Because sometimes we might chant for 30 minutes or sometimes even an hour. How does your body and mind change during that period? And you're observing with it, observing the characteristic of impermanence. And you may begin energized and then get tired, or you may begin feeling cold and you become hotter. You feel hot at the beginning, you cool down afterwards, or your mind is distracted and full of all kinds of worries at the beginning, and then later those worries and distractions have passed away, and you can see the impermanent changing nature of both your physical body and the mental states you experience while you're chanting. That really is not separate from any other aspect of our meditation practice or Dhamma practice as a whole. And for most people, I think, practice long term, they find it's an aid, it's something that assists you. As I said, sometimes it's almost like the fast track into samadhi, because many of the qualities of samadhi arise as you're chanting. The one-pointedness, the piti and sukha, the lightness of body and mind, rapture can arise, and feel very, very light and at ease in your body. Waves of rapture can come up. Your hairs can stand on end on your arms or the back of your neck. Tears can form in your eyes, just as when you're peaceful in meditation. You can feel very content, very happy as you're chanting, because you're thinking of very wholesome subjects as you chant. And what we call vitakka vichara, putting your attention on the object, in this case, the words that you're chanting. Vichara, sustaining that attention on the chant, keeping your mind there with the chant. These are fulfilling various factors of samadhi. So sometimes people just go into samadhi as they're chanting, and maybe they even stop chanting for a while, but not because they're asleep, but their mind goes into a state of calm, stillness, insight. Maybe they stop feeling their body, they stop feeling the hardness, the weight of their body as their mind, they've gone inwards, and the coarseness of the body and the sense impingement that we normally have, the sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, disappears. And the mind goes inwards. And just like samadhi, based on the breath or any other meditation object, the chanting can stimulate that, and the mind has gone inwards, gone very quiet, still. There's other things, other benefits we get. Like one is you can see, well, it can make you feel very content. It brings you to think of the Buddha and the Dhamma, and you gain a lot of contentment from that. And contentment means, feeling at ease, happy, the sense of well-being in the present moment, simply by turning your mind to a wholesome object. And in this day and age, we know how much we depend on other stimulus to feel good, feel content. So, I'm happy when I've got my phone in my hand and I'm looking at stuff, scrolling, contacting people, texting, and so on. Or sometimes we're unhappy because of what we see, what we read. Or I've got my gaming console, or I'm driving my car, or I'm eating my food, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that, listening to my music or whatever. So much of our happiness is what we call sensual happiness, just based on the stimulation of material things and material experiences of the world. But when you're chanting, just like any other form of meditation, your attention comes inwards and you have this inner feeling of contentment, happiness. You're separating your mind from the physical body as you're going inwards. You're separating your mind from the senses, distancing yourself from all that desiring and wanting that comes up based on sense contact. And you're distancing your mind from the world around us and all the things that we normally get caught up in that bring us so much stress and suffering. And that distancing, we call that seclusion from the senses. It brings with it a great sense of inner peace, because you're no longer needing all this other stuff to be happy. You don't need your phone, your computer, you don't need food or music or people or this or that or beautiful scenery or different pleasant experiences. You can let all that go as your mind goes in, and chanting can bring you to that point where you have this happiness. One of the ways Ajahn Chah used to talk about this happiness is it's a feeling of everything is just right. You don't need anything more to be happy in that moment. The Thai word is podi. It's enough. It's just right. So if you can achieve that by chanting or with other meditation as well, or hearing the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma, you have such a great source of inspiration there, because you're happy and everything feels just right based on these inner qualities you're developing and the sense of letting go of the rest of the world. And that's an invaluable thing to experience for human beings, because nowadays our modern society, our life and our happiness is so much associated with material things, material wealth, technology, and so on. That if you can experience that inwardly, just through the power of the Dhamma, skillful states of mind, skillful qualities of mind that you bring up, that's our good fortune, and it's such a valuable experience because it changes your perspective, doesn't it? If you know that you can be peaceful through chanting, peaceful through meditation, peaceful through listening to Dhamma, then you have that source, that memory, that source of inspiration available to you. Of course, peace, it doesn't always arise. We sometimes have a lot of negative emotions and worries and problems bothering us, and so the mind doesn't settle down so easily. But at least if you have that memory, it can help spur you on to practice more, and you may be able to repeat that kind of happiness again, over and over again. There's a feeling of contentment, inner contentment. You don't need anything else to be happy in that moment. And that's something very special for us as human beings to experience. Even if you have externally a lot of problems in your life, or you have health issues and so on, if you just experience that feeling of contentment, just rightness, even if it's only for a short period, that can be very useful to us. Helps to energize, brighten the mind, gives us the patience to deal with whatever our problem is, health problem, relationship problem, work problem, money problem, and so on. Many people have found chanting paritas, verses, suttas from the Buddha when they're ill has helped them to develop the right attitude towards their illness. The pain and the discomfort and the fear and anxiety based around illness helps them to face that with a sense of inner peace and well-being, even if physically, externally, the body is in pain or weak or discomfort, so on. Facing feelings of loneliness, worry and anxiety about the future, different problems we have to face in our life, just the same. Gives you this inner warmth, the warmth of skillful mental states that helps you to deal with problems because you have this inner feeling of peace, or just the just rightness of the mind. It means there's enough wholesome factors to sustain the mind in a good state. That's what samadhi gives us, but even chanting can give us, also listening to the Dhamma can give us. There's enough wholesome qualities of mind arising together. It's a bit like, I don't know if you've ever baked a cake for the first time and you had a recipe you've been following, but you don't know whether you can do it or not. Then you get the ingredients, you follow the instructions, and finally it all comes together. Your cake or your loaf of bread or whatever it is you're baking all comes together, and you put it in the oven for the right amount of time and you pull it out and it works. It comes out and it looks okay and it probably tastes okay. It's the same kind of thing. You've got many different factors, ingredients coming together in a wholesome way, a skillful way, and they bring their result. You may not achieve that every single time, but if you've done it before, you can do it. So then you can repeat it or aim to repeat it, do it again and again and again, and so on. Just like a skilled baker learns what they need to learn about cooking, baking bread or cake or something, and then they can repeat it over and over again. So this feeling of inner contentment is very important to us as humans. Once you've experienced it and you understand the sort of method, the way it comes about, even if you can't just repeat it just like that, you're not that skilled, but at least you know it's true. It's something that exists. Gives you the right direction to go in your practice. And chanting is one way you can get there. So, say in a Buddhist monastery, we tend to chant regularly as part of our program, morning program, evening program. We have chanting, we have meditation. You can do exactly the same thing at home. You can have your own daily session where you do some chanting, some meditation. And often the best way to help relatives, friends, family members is, you learn to chant, and then you can lead them in the same thing or join in the same activity together. You'll notice if you have one family member, one of the group can chant, maybe they've learned some of these verses of protection off by heart, and then the others can join in and they get pulled along. So it's also a good group activity to get people practicing together in a wholesome way, and you develop some good positive group energy as well. So sometimes we have late night chanting sessions, paritas, or chant iti piso bhagawa. For a number, you make a plan. You say, I'm going to, or as a group, you're going to chant iti piso bhagawa arahang for 108 times, or 1,000 times, or for a certain period of time for 3 hours, or whatever it may be, even if it's only for 20 minutes. The whole point is you're setting yourself a target. And if there's a group of you, well, you help each other out, because sometimes you get your voice runs out, so if someone else is chanting, you have a rest. But you set yourself a target, and that brings up the effort, the energy, the patience, the commitment, the faith. All the good qualities come up by doing this. And people learn like that. They learn how to chant, and they learn how to develop more in patience and endurance as they chant. And it can also be of benefit to others. I mean, the Krubra Ajahns, our teachers say, when you chant as a group, particularly in a monastery or in on some kind of special holy day or special religious event, not only do the humans, the people in that event, hear the chant and become inspired, but maybe even the devas, they hear this chanting. They hear the chanting, and the devas come, and the devas tend to boost this feeling of well-being in the area where people are chanting. So particularly in Buddhist monasteries, where they have chedhis, stupas, places where the Buddha relics are stored, or the relics of arahants are stored, or in meditation halls with a Buddha statue, or sema halls where they have ordinations, and so on. In these places, where people come and chant, they gather regularly, meditate and chant regularly. It brings up a tangible energy, a sort of good energy that when you're peaceful, you notice. And sometimes when you're not peaceful, you're just coming into the hall or the chedi to practice. You feel some of the good energy there, and it helps you to calm down, brings up your own faith and samadhi in that place. And partly maybe is the action of devas as well, the presence of devas. So in meditation halls such as this one here at Bodhipala Monastery, or in our monastery in Melbourne, Bodhivana Monastery, sometimes people meditate and they hear the sound of other people chanting, not just with their eyes closed in their meditation, but they're just sitting there and they hear chanting, and they ask, who is chanting? But there's no one chanting. It's you call it celestial chanting, deva chanting. It's the devas chanting, and they just maybe briefly hear them, or they smell the deva flowers, the deva incense. It's another common experience in these places. Sometimes people see visual images of devas chanting, bowing, prostrating, lighting incense, chanting together. Also, these things can happen. Both Sangha members and lay people have those experiences. If it's someone with a very powerful mind, somebody who's attained samadhi, maybe they're just on their own in the forest doing their meditation and chanting, and the devas come and worship near them. Usually it's a monastic, sometimes it can be a lay person as well. And the devas come and they also join in when that monastic is chanting. They listen, and there's a tangible good feeling. Maybe even you can see the bright light. Like in our kuti, one of the kutis in Bodhivana Monastery in Melbourne, one time somebody saw a bright light emanating from the kuti. way into the middle of the night. They assumed somebody had turned on a light, but there was no electricity in that kuti, it's in the forest. Or they assumed the monk must be lighting some lantern, turning on some torch or something, but no, they weren't doing that. So sometimes you even see the brightness, the radiance, the aura of the individual who's chanting, or maybe it's the devas around. The aura is there. Sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's a visual image, sometimes it's a smell, sometimes it's a sound, or sometimes all of them together. It's also possible. But these are experiences that come through practicing meditation, chanting, and so on, becoming more mindful and becoming more aware of the internal qualities of the mind. And chanting, paritas, suttas, this is one way in there, into the mind and to the subtle layers of the mind and the peace of the mind as well. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight on this half moon night. We've chanted, we've meditated, you've heard the Dhamma talk. But before we finish, we'll also open up if anyone has any questions, and we'll see if we can help answer.
Andamayang Vadakatha Sadhu Karang Tatamase Satu 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 Anamodami